My name's Smith, I'm 32, and I got married last Saturday in what was meant to be the most joyful day of my life. The kind of day you reflect on when you're elderly and silver-haired, the kind of day folks say will pass in a whirlwind of joy, affection, and kin. And for the most part, it did, except for the vacant, hollow seats reserved for those I hold dearest. Each time I looked their way, I felt that persistent pang in my heart. Here's the detail that still twists my gut. Not one member of my family showed up. Not my parents, not my sister, not even my closest friend Tom, who's been like a sibling to me since we were young. Instead, they all attended my sister's engagement celebration. Yes, you read correctly. My sister Clara planned her engagement celebration on the exact same day as my wedding, despite knowing my date for 8 months. And my family picked her. It wasn't even discreet. The invitations to her event were sent 2 months before my wedding, with save-the-date notices that practically demanded attention, gold lettering, elegant handwriting, professional images of her and her fiancé embracing on a rooftop at dusk. Meanwhile, when I dispatched my invitations, all I received were brief, uneasy messages. My mom wrote, "We'll need to check if we can manage it, dear." My dad didn't even reply, just sent a thumbs-up symbol 3 days later. I tried to convince myself I was overanalyzing. Clara has always been the preferred one, the shining star who could do no wrong. She got the larger room as kids, the vehicle on her 16th birthday, and my parents' endless, devoted focus. I was accustomed to taking a backseat, but I hoped, naively, that my wedding would stand out. 2 weeks before the occasion, I called my mom to confirm their travel arrangements. She paused for a long moment before saying, "Smith, about the wedding, your sister's engagement celebration is the same day. It's going to be challenging for us to be at both." I chuckled at first, thinking she was jesting. She wasn't. "So you're not attending?" I asked, my voice breaking in a way I disliked. "It's just that her future in-laws are arriving from Asia. It's such a rare chance to gather everyone," she said, as if that excused missing my wedding entirely. "Mom, this is my wedding, my singular wedding." She sighed as if I were being irrational. "You'll comprehend when you have children of your own. We simply can't be in 2 spots at once." I ended the call without a farewell. My hands trembled so much I nearly dropped the phone. I didn't tell my fiancée, Emma, right away. I didn't want to dampen her enthusiasm. But the following days were a haze of uncomfortable talks with family members, each one regretfully informing me they couldn't attend. Tom, my best man, called me the night before the wedding and said, "I'm truly sorry, mate, but Clara's event, it's quite significant. I can't skip it." When the day arrived, I walked down the aisle with a forced grin on my face, the kind you wear when you're trying to mask everything. Emma looked stunning, like a vision from a fantasy. Our friends filled the space with warmth and merriment, and I tried to concentrate on them. But every time my gaze drifted toward the unoccupied section of chairs, my heart clenched. The ceremony proceeded flawlessly, and for a few blissful moments, I forgot the pain. It wasn't until the reception, just as we sliced the cake, that reality hit hard again. My phone, resting on the table beside me, lit up with a text from my mom. "We need to discuss." Now, before I could even process it, the screen flooded with alerts, call after call. 52 missed calls in less than an hour. My hand froze around the cake cutter, the laughter around me fading into a dull buzz. Emma noticed the look on my face and whispered, "What's wrong?" I didn't respond right away. I just stared at the phone, my heart racing, wondering what could possibly be so urgent that my mother, who hadn't appeared at my wedding, was suddenly eager to reach me. And then the phone vibrated again, this time with a message that sank my stomach. It was from my cousin Bella, the one person in my family who occasionally shared truths when the others tried to shield me. Her message read, "You won't believe what's unfolding here. Call me when you can, but don't mention I told you." That single line was enough to make my pulse quicken. I didn't reply right away. I knew if I did, she might get entangled in whatever storm was brewing. But the knot in my stomach told me it had something to do with Clara's engagement celebration. I slipped my phone into my pocket, trying not to let it spoil the moment, but my mind kept turning. I barely heard the DJ announcing our first dance. I held Emma close, swaying to the music, yet all I could imagine was my parents, my sister, and my so-called best friend all gathered in some grand hall, sipping wine and posing for pictures, while I celebrated one of the most crucial days of my life without them. After the dance, I excused myself for a quick restroom break and stepped outside into the cool night breeze. The music from the reception hall dulled behind me. I finally called Bella. She picked up on the first ring. "Smith, they're speaking about you," she blurted, her voice low, like she was hiding in a cupboard. "They're saying you selfishly scheduled your wedding to rival Clara's big day. Your mom's been telling people you did it intentionally." I froze. "What? That's absurd. I announced my date months before she even got engaged." "I know," Bella said swiftly, "but they're making it seem like you wanted to overshadow her. And get this, your dad's been telling her fiancé's family that you're not very connected to the family anymore, so it's understandable that none of them came." My mouth went dry. "They're altering the narrative while it's happening." "That's not all," she continued. "Tom's here. He's been going around saying he couldn't be your best man because you were being stubborn about the guest list. Like he's making it sound like you didn't want him there." For a moment, I couldn't speak. Tom, the guy I've shared every major milestone with, standing there in my sister's engagement celebration, slandering me to people I barely know. Bella hesitated before adding, "And your mom's calling you because, well, I don't know the full story, but apparently she needs you to resolve something for Clara tonight. She said it's critical. That's why she's been calling so much." The ridiculousness of it struck me like a blow. They skipped my wedding to go to my sister's engagement celebration, and now, in the middle of my reception, they needed me to fix something for her. I wanted to hang up and walk back inside. Pretend I'd never heard any of it, but I couldn't shake the anger rising in my throat. My entire life, this was the pattern. They'd hurt me, cast me as the villain in their tale, and then come to me when they needed something. And I'd always given in because they were my family. But that night, standing outside in the dark with the faint sound of clinking glasses and laughter from two different celebrations miles apart, I felt something shift. I didn't tell Emma yet. I didn't want to ruin her night with my family's chaos. But the burden of it sat heavy in my chest. When I walked back inside, the room was alive with music. Friends were dancing, and for a brief moment I let myself smile. But every so often, I'd feel my phone buzz again. Another call, another text, my mom's name flashing across the screen like a reminder that the people who should have been there for me had chosen someone else, and still expected me to drop everything for them. By the time the night ended, I had 68 missed calls, and the last voicemail they left made my hands clench into fists. When Emma and I finally got back to our hotel suite that night, we were exhausted. The kind of tired that comes from smiling for hours while your heart is silently breaking. I was just about to toss my phone onto the dresser and forget about it until morning when I saw a new text from Bella. It wasn't a paragraph this time. It was just a photo. I tapped it open and my stomach turned. There, in crisp, high-definition clarity, was my sister Clara standing at her engagement celebration, wearing my late grandmother's wedding pendant. It wasn't just any piece of jewelry. It was the one heirloom I'd been promised since I was a teenager. My grandmother had pulled me aside when I was 19, just before she passed, and told me, "Smith, this is for the woman you marry. I want her to wear it on your wedding day." She even wrote it in her will. That pendant had been in a velvet case in my mother's safe for years, and when I asked about it a few months ago, Mom told me, "Oh, it's not in good shape anymore. Best not to use it." Now here it was, gleaming around Clara's neck, matching perfectly with her designer gown. And the worst part? In the background of the photo, I saw Tom, my best friend, smiling next to her, holding a glass of wine. I just sat there staring at it, my pulse in my ears. Emma noticed my expression. "What is it?" she asked softly. I hesitated. We'd made a pact to keep the day about us, not my family's nonsense. But as I showed her the photo, her jaw tightened. "That's the pendant your grandmother left for you." I nodded. My voice was tight. "My mom told me it was damaged." She lied. She gave it to Clara for her engagement celebration. Emma sank onto the bed, her hands curling in her lap. "Smith, that's not just disrespectful, that's theft." As if on cue, my phone buzzed again, another call from Mom. I let it go to voicemail, but curiosity got the better of me. I put it on speaker. Her voice filled the room, cheerful at first, then sharp. "Smith, I don't know why you're not answering. Clara had a small issue tonight. The caterer overbooked, and we're short on a few items. We need you to call in a favor with that eatery you know, the one in town. And oh, by the way, I gave her grandma's pendant so she could wear something meaningful tonight. Don't make this a big fuss. It's just a piece of jewelry. Call me back." Now I think that was the moment something in me truly broke. It wasn't just the absence at my wedding. It wasn't just the gossip and the lies. It was that she could take something so deeply personal, something tied to my grandmother's memory, and hand it over to my sister like it was nothing. The weight of that betrayal sank in slowly, like ice spreading through my chest. All those years of swallowing my pride, of telling myself they didn't mean to harm me, of making excuses, it hit me that they never saw me as worth shielding. Not even on the most important day of my life. I sat there in silence for a long time, phone still in my hand, before setting it down. My mind was already starting to move past the shock, past the hurt, and into something colder, sharper. This time I wasn't going to just let it go. The next morning, sunlight streamed through the hotel curtains, but it felt dimmed, like the world had lost some brightness. Emma was still asleep beside me, her hand resting loosely around mine, but my mind was far from the quiet comfort of that moment. I checked my phone. The onslaught hadn't stopped. 93 missed calls now, 22 voicemails. Dozens of texts, some from my mom, some from my dad. A few even from distant relatives who hadn't spoken to me in years. Most of them saying the same thing. You need to call your sister, not congratulations on your wedding. Not we're sorry we couldn't be there. Just commands, demands, and guilt-laden messages that made my stomach twist. I finally played another voicemail, this one from Dad. His tone was clipped, almost irritated. Smith, I don't know what's gotten into you, but ignoring your family on a night like this is childish. We were hoping you'd be more mature now that you're married. Call your mother back and do the right thing. The right thing. As if they had done the right thing by me. That day should have been filled with brunches, laughter, and recounting the best moments from the night before. Instead, I spent it with an ache in my chest and a fog in my mind. We went for a quiet breakfast at a small cafe near the water, and though Emma tried to keep the conversation light, I could see the way her eyes searched mine, concerned. When we got back to the hotel, I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the small overnight bag I'd packed for the wedding. Among the neatly folded clothes was an empty velvet case, my grandmother's pendant case. I'd brought it with me, thinking I'd surprise Emma with the real thing. But when my mom told me it was damaged, I'd tucked it away instead. Now it felt like a cruel reminder of just how little my family valued me. I didn't cry. I thought I might, but the tears didn't come. Instead, there was this hollow, gnawing space inside me where something used to be. And in that emptiness, tiny threads of thought began weaving together. Quiet, subtle, but persistent. I didn't tell Emma yet, but I started saving screenshots. Every text from my parents. Every photo Bella sent me from that engagement celebration. Every voicemail, especially the ones dripping with manipulation. I backed them up one by one into a folder on my laptop labeled simply for later. That afternoon, while Emma took a nap, I sat in the hotel lobby with my laptop open, pretending to scroll through honeymoon destinations. In reality, I was looking up the exact terms of my grandmother's will. The one that specified the pendant was to be mine. I still had a scanned copy saved from years ago when I'd helped my grandmother with paperwork. And there it was, in plain language. I leave my wedding pendant to my grandson, Smith Harper, to be given to his bride on the day of their wedding. It hit me then that what my mother had done wasn't just morally wrong. It was legally questionable. But I didn't slam the laptop shut or call anyone to confront them. I knew better. If I lashed out now, they'd spin it the same way they always did. Smith is overreacting. Smith is ungrateful. Smith is making a scene. So I smiled politely when the hotel staff congratulated us. I posted one carefully chosen wedding photo online, ignoring the dozens of texts from relatives asking why I wasn't addressing the situation. I kept my head down, outwardly calm, while inside, something sharper and colder than I'd ever felt before was taking shape. They thought they'd gotten away with it. I was about to make sure they never saw it coming. When Emma and I returned from our short honeymoon a week later, my focus shifted. Instead of drowning in that hollow feeling, I poured myself into the things I could control. My marriage, my career, and the life we were building without my family's approval looming over it. The first change was at work. I'd been a mid-level project manager at a fast-growing marketing firm, good enough to be respected, but never loud enough to be noticed by the higher-ups. I stayed late, volunteered for projects nobody wanted, and within 3 months, I landed a major client that boosted our department's revenue by nearly 40%. The CEO personally thanked me in front of the entire company and promoted me to director. With the new role came a significant salary increase, and I started investing seriously. I'd already been dabbling in real estate for a few years, but now I had the resources to buy not just one, but 3 rental properties in prime areas. Within a year, the passive income from those alone rivaled my salary. Emma and I bought a house on the edge of the city, modern, sunlit, with a home office that overlooked the river. Our social circle grew too. Without the constant negativity from my family, there was more space for genuine friendships. We hosted dinner parties, weekend getaways, and charity events through Emma's art network. People we met saw us for who we really were, not as the afterthought in a family hierarchy, but as a couple who had built something of their own. It was during one of those events, a fundraiser at our home, that I realized how far I'd come. Standing in the living room, glass of wine in hand, I overheard two guests talking about how Smith just seems to have it all together. I smiled to myself. They had no idea how much of that came from deciding to step back from the people who constantly tried to pull me down. Meanwhile, Bella and I kept in touch quietly. She'd give me small updates here and there. How Clara's wedding planning was spiraling into chaos, how my parents were grumbling about how distant I'd become, and how mad it started showing up at family gatherings acting like nothing had happened. I never engaged. I never defended myself. The silence worked in my favor. They had no fuel for their drama, no fresh outbursts to twist into their version of events. And all the while, I was documenting, saving receipts, photos, and every little piece of proof that painted the full picture of what they'd done. One afternoon, almost a year after my wedding, I got an email from a national business magazine. They wanted to feature me in a piece about young professionals who had achieved financial independence before 35. The feature came with a glossy photo shoot and an interview about my investments, career growth, and philanthropy. When it hit newsstands, I knew my family saw it. Bella confirmed it. My mother apparently bought 3 copies just to see if it was really him, and still I heard nothing from them. No congratulations, no acknowledgement, just silence. The kind that's heavy with pride swallowing and quiet resentment. I wasn't looking for their approval anymore, but I knew deep down that my growing success was setting the stage for something bigger. Because the pendant, the lies, the missed wedding, they weren't forgotten. And the next move I was planning would make sure they never forgot them either. The turning point came on a rainy Tuesday afternoon, nearly 18 months after my wedding. I was at my desk, reviewing contracts for a new commercial property I was buying, when an email from Bella popped into my inbox. The subject line was short but loaded. Thought you'd want to see this. Attached was a PDF, high-resolution scans of the inventory list from my grandmother's estate, complete with signatures. The pendant was there, clear as day, with my name next to it, as the designated inheritor. But that wasn't the part that caught my attention. At the bottom of the document was a set of signatures, including my mother's, and a note that read, "Released to Clara Harper for temporary use, June 15th, to be returned to rightful owner." Temporary use? The date, June 15th, was the night of Clara's engagement celebration, which meant my mother had on paper acknowledged that the pendant was mine. And now, nearly 2 years later, she had still not returned it. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the screen. My pulse quickened. This wasn't just an emotional betrayal anymore. This was a written, legally binding acknowledgement. That same week, fate handed me another card. Through work, I had started collaborating with a high-profile event planner who specialized in luxury weddings and galas. Over coffee one afternoon, she casually mentioned that she had just booked a massive wedding for a client with ridiculous demands. Bride's name is Clara Harper. I kept my expression neutral, but my mind was racing. Clara's wedding was happening in 6 months, and from the sound of it, it was going to be big, lavish, expensive, and very, very public. The planner, not realizing the connection, went on about how the venue was an exclusive estate, the kind you had to book years in advance, and how the bride wanted everything perfect for the family image. Family image. It was almost too perfect. I now had 2 things: undeniable proof the pendant belonged to me, and insider knowledge about the single most important event of my sister's life. And unlike my wedding, her big day was going to be packed with extended family, business connections, and media coverage. I started making quiet moves. I hired a discreet but highly skilled attorney, not to send a lawsuit yet, but to review the will, the signed release document, and every scrap of evidence I had saved since my wedding day. He confirmed what I suspected. I had a strong legal case to reclaim the pendant, and if I wanted to, I could pursue damages for wrongful withholding of inherited property. But I wasn't ready to file anything yet. Timing was everything. I also began attending more networking events in the city, subtly expanding my circle into areas I knew overlapped with my family's. Business leaders they admired, journalists who covered society weddings, even the owner of the estate where Clara's wedding was scheduled to take place. I never mentioned my connection to her. I just made sure I was in the right places, shaking the right hands, making the right impressions. By the time spring rolled around, I wasn't just in a better position than I'd ever been. I was in a position of quiet influence, and the people I was now connected to, they'd be at Clara's wedding. The final piece fell into place when Bella called one night, her voice low. "Smith, I probably shouldn't be telling you this, but Mom's been boasting about how she's keeping the pendant safe for Clara to wear on her wedding day. She says you don't care about family traditions anymore, so it's better off with her." I think Bella hung up and sat in silence for a long moment. The stage was set. The date was locked. The audience was guaranteed. And for the first time in years, I felt the old ache in my chest start to fade, replaced by a calm, steady certainty. When my move came, they wouldn't just lose the pendant. They'd lose the narrative they'd spent their whole lives building. The day of Clara's wedding dawned warm and bright, with the kind of golden light photographers dream about. I woke early, not because I was invited. I wasn't, of course, but because the plan I'd been building for over a year was finally going into motion. I spent the morning in my home office, going over the folder on my desk one last time. Inside were neatly organized documents. My grandmother's will, the signed temporary release, paper with my mother's signature, dated photos of the pendant at Clara's engagement celebration, and correspondence from my attorney. The last page was the piece de resistance, a formal letter addressed to the wedding's venue owner, the event planner, and most importantly, Clara herself. It was an official demand for the immediate return of the pendant to its rightful owner, citing legal clauses, and including a clear warning about the consequences of noncompliance. The timing was critical. My attorney, a calm, polished man named Vincent, was scheduled to hand-deliver these documents at the venue at precisely 3:15 p.m., just as guests would be arriving and the pre-ceremony photos were beginning. But that was only part of it. In the weeks leading up to this day, I'd quietly tipped off a lifestyle journalist I'd befriended, someone known for covering high society events, but with a knack for sniffing out the drama under the glamour. I didn't tell her everything, just enough to pique her interest that a certain heirloom pendant being worn today wasn't actually in the bride's possession legally. She'd done her own digging, confirming my name was attached to the inheritance record. She promised nothing, but I knew her type. If something happened at the wedding, she'd be ready. At exactly 3:17, my phone buzzed. It was Vincent. "It's done," he said simply. "And Smith, your sister didn't take it well." Through Bella, who was texting me under the table from the bridesmaid's suite, I got the play-by-play. Apparently, Vincent's arrival with the documents had caused a ripple through the wedding staff. The event planner read the letter, went pale, and immediately pulled Clara aside. My mother tried to brush it off, saying it was just a misunderstanding. But when Vincent pointed to the signed release and will, the planner quietly reminded them that hosting an event with disputed property could open the venue to liability, which meant, in no uncertain terms, Clara couldn't walk down the aisle wearing that pendant. Bella's texts came rapid fire. She's shouting at Mom in the dressing room. Tom's trying to calm her down, but she just threw a hairbrush at him. "Oh my, they're taking the pendant off right now." And then the one that made me lean back in my chair, satisfied. The photographer just packed up the jewelry shots. She's in tears. I didn't post anything. I didn't gloat. I simply waited. By 6 p.m., the first whispers had already started circulating online. Grainy photos of a tense-looking bride without her signature piece, accompanied by vague captions about last-minute changes and family disagreements. The journalist I'd tipped off posted a short but loaded article the next morning. The missing heirloom. The quiet drama behind yesterday's lavish Harper wedding. The article didn't paint me as a villain. It didn't have to. It simply laid out the facts, quoted the will, and ended with the line, "The pendant is now back in the rightful possession of the grandson it was intended for." Which, of course, it was, resting in the velvet case on my desk, where it had belonged all along. The calls from my parents started almost immediately after the article went live. I didn't answer, because this time the silence was mine to give. The fallout was faster and harsher than I expected. By the end of that week, the story had been picked up by a couple of other local outlets. Nothing huge, but enough to make its way through the social circles my parents valued most. People who had always fawned over them at fundraisers suddenly had other plans. Clara's new in-laws, who had been proud to marry into what they thought was a polished, respectable family, were furious that her wedding had been tainted by public embarrassment. Bella told me in hushed phone calls how the tension in their house had turned suffocating. My mom blamed my dad for not handling it quietly. My dad blamed my mom for signing the release document in the first place. Clara, meanwhile, had been trying to spin the narrative online, posting old photos of herself in the pendant from her engagement celebration, captioned with vague quotes about family meaning more than property. But the comments under her posts told a different story. People were asking uncomfortable questions. Some even tagged me, saying they were glad justice had been done. Tom, my so-called best friend, didn't escape unscathed either. He'd been one of Clara's loudest defenders after the engagement celebration, but the article made it clear he'd lied about my supposed guest list drama. Several mutual friends cut him off completely. When I ran into him months later at a networking event, he couldn't even make eye contact. The pendant stayed in my possession, exactly where it was meant to be, but it had become more than just an heirloom now. It was a symbol, a reminder that I didn't have to play by their rules anymore. I didn't need their approval, their invitations, or their version of the truth to define me. I never spoke to my parents again after that. Not because I was angry, though I was, but because I realized there was nothing left to say. They'd made their choice the day they skipped my wedding. All I'd done was make sure the world saw it for what it was. A year later, on our anniversary, Emma wore the pendant for the first time. We went out to dinner, just the two of us, in a quiet corner of the city. As the light caught the gold and gems, I thought of my grandmother, how she'd wanted this for me, and how it had taken nearly losing everything to finally claim it. Emma caught me looking at her and smiled. "Feels like it's home now, doesn't it?" I nodded, not needing to say more. Because the truth was simple. They had taken themselves out of my life, and I had finally closed the door behind them. And I didn't just lock it, I threw away the key.